So let's bring in the man who engineered the draft, and that is the GM of the New York Jets, Mike Maccagnan. Mike, it's Michael, Donald, and Peter. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing today?
We're doing all right. So a couple of days to think about it. What's your overall feel for how you guys did?
Well, I think we feel pretty good about the draft class we picked up here the other day. It's a lot of work goes into this, and it was kind of an interesting draft in terms of moving around a little bit, picking up some extra players and prospects, but we do feel good about it going forward.
Were there any conversations or thoughts about trading down in the first round and getting even more picks?
I think really when it was all said and done, we really didn't have an opportunity to move out of the spot. There wasn't a lot of teams at that point in time that were trying to come up to 6. So it was a pretty easy decision for us with Jamal. I know at that point in time, it kind of reminded me a little bit of how things unfolded my first year here when we drafted Leo in the first round. I will say this, we didn't quite expect Jamal to be there at 6. I think when you kind of compare that to the 2015 draft, late in the process that we're kind of following, like where teams are sort of projecting who was going to fall where, we had a feeling that Leo would get to 5. We always kind of assumed maybe somebody would trade in there and pick him up, or Washington would take him. But then, of course, there was an outside chance he thought he'd fall to 6. So as it unfolded the other day, we were kind of very excited because we had Jamal rated very highly on our board. We obviously think very highly of him as a player, but also as kind of what he brings from an intangible standpoint off the field. So, but no, when it's all said and done, really wasn't a situation where we had an opportunity to move back out. So we went with the best player available and felt pretty good about it.
And the Leo that Mike's talking about is Leonard Williams, and that was considered at the time a home run. And the first couple of years, Mike would not convince anybody otherwise. And then with Adams drops down, I guess the question is, why would he have dropped to your spot? I just don't get it. Some people had him on the top of their draft board.
Well, I think, I don't really think when you go into this process, everybody views things differently. I think when the trade was made and, Chicago went up and took the quarterback, I think that sort of bumped things down just a little bit. Mm-hmm. But really, when it came down to it, Tennessee took a good player, we thought, in Corey Davis, and we were sitting there thinking if one of those teams right ahead of us, we're kind of expecting them to potentially take Jamal. But again, you probably have to ask those guys what they thought. But we felt pretty good when he kind of slid right to us. So, and again, with the injury we had last year to Gilly, this will be a good player for us in terms of the fit and the scheme, and again, hopefully from our standpoint, kind of like Leo or Leonard, a cornerstone type player going forward.
Safety in round 2, is that also best available player?
Yeah, it was interesting. I know a lot of people sort of, they kind of saw us take 2 safeties, but from our standpoint, and there's other players we like, but we felt very good about Marcus Maye at that point in time. We didn't go into the draft, sort of penciling in, okay, we're going to take this position in this round and this position in this round. But when it came down to it, and we kind of went through the process, he was significantly or slightly ahead of some other players around him, and we felt very good about that, and we felt very good about adding just, again, another good football player to the organization who happened to actually be a safety. But he's similar to Jamal in a lot of ways in terms of not just his ability and skill, but also from an intangible standpoint. So, again, we felt very good from that standpoint to add him to the organization also.
How should Jet fans take it that you guys did not decide to select a quarterback? What does that mean for next year?
Well, I think really when you look at it from our standpoint, we obviously there are some quarterbacks in this draft that we did like, but when our pick came up, the best player available, we felt didn't happen to be that position. But we're looking forward to seeing how the off season unfolds here with the players we have under contract with Josh, Christian, and Bryce, and we're kind of excited to see what they can do going forward. We'll get a good feel for them through this off season and then into the preseason to see how it unfolds.
Is it overwhelming, Mike, and you traded down a lot later on to pick up extra draft picks, that there are so many areas of need for this team? I mean, you at the bottom of the draft, you took 2 cornerbacks, so you have 2 safeties, 2 cornerbacks as you're trying to reimagine and remake the defense. Are there a lot of holes on this team right now?
Well, I think, we're going to be a team, I think, with a lot of opportunities for a lot of these younger players that we actually, there's a lot of players on our roster we like, and then last year in particular, due to a lot of the injuries we had, some of them got a chance to play quite extensively. So, from our standpoint, when you go into a draft, I think sometimes people want to approach it thinking like, hey, you have a grocery list and you're just going to start picking off, positions. Okay, we need this or we need that. But really, from our standpoint, the draft is so important to build this, team long term, and that's been our focus really from day one. So we kind of focus on best available player for the most part, and we take need into consideration when all things are equal on the player. But I think the way the draft unfolded, we got some good players at various positions. We feel very good about adding the 2 safeties we added. I think it's going to make that position extremely competitive and a very solid position for us going forward. We added 2 more young receivers who, again, we felt very good about, both of which are, when we went through, not only just from an ability standpoint, but from a competitive and personality and character standpoint, very good about. And I know a lot of people look at the fact, in terms of cornerback, but I think in some cases there were some good corners in this draft, and some of them got picked, before some of our picks. But I think when it came through, we just weren't in a position where that was the best player on the board at that time. We did feel good about the 2 kids we picked up late with some of the extra picks we picked up, who, they're when you get to that point in the draft, you're looking for, guys that have developmental qualities and skills, and we thought both those guys had some very good traits. One of them's coming off an injury, so we thought, in terms of Jeremy Clark, he had a little more, upside and potential. Had he stayed healthy the whole season, maybe he would have been rated higher. But they fit kind of some, the criteria we liked in terms of, potential and ability, and, they may, we're kind of excited to see what they do, and they may surprise a little people when they actually get in here and get a chance to play and perform.